Hey everybody, welcome back to Divulgence. Today I'm very excited. We've got researcher podcaster Michael King in the house, and we have Hasburg Jolly West. Mike King, what's going on, man? Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.
Before we start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and some stuff that you like working on and what interests you?
Right now, I'm about to be starting a kind of career that I don't want to jinx disclosing, but I'll pretty much be able to research and make the kind of information that I gather actionable, and it pertains to busting trafficking routes. And that's one of the reasons why I can't give too much information on that, and partly because it's not very safe. But right now I'm holding up the fort doing like temp work. Some of the jobs can be pretty high paying and I can get decent hours, but like it's not really all that steady or consistent. So right now I'm holding out doing that kind of thing, but it's a kind of work where I'm able to have an earbud in, just like turn PDFs to audio and just listen to that and pretty much do research like all day. Oh yeah, so by the way, when it's got really bad snow down here in the south, I took this job that was at BMW. I didn't even really check the description, but it was the Saturday it started snowing. I didn't realize how bad the snow was going to be, and I was like, oh well, this is a 12-hour shift with really good pay, so hey, I'm a little behind, so might as well do that. Well, we ended up getting snowed in at this BMW facility where it's like there's no way you're going to drive back. Like the road crew weren't out there yet. So they this BMW facility is like so big. They have barracks and stuff over there. So they just kept us there overnight, then had us shovel snow in the morning, and I ended up being there for 36 hours and got paid for all 36 hours there with only doing like 16 hours of work. Yeah.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, that's what I've been up to. That's what I've been up to recently.
Right on, right on. Hadsburg, how are you doing, my friend? Good to see you.
Doing great, man. It's been a little warmer out here in Oregon than I guess y'all have. We've been in like the 60s every day, so
well, it's more temperate. It's more temperate around the West Coast, more consistent weather from what I hear. Yeah.
sometimes. It depends. We're on the west side of the Cascade here. So
okay. Yeah. Did before we jump into anything, did you guys watch the Super Bowl?
No. I don't really watch sports, but I know there has been a lot of controversies there.
It's got nothing to do with the game. Well, I mean, the game was
that was a boring game, dude.
A boring fucking game, man. Like the kicker should have won the MVP. First of all, because it was like or even the punters, because it was all kicks and punts for like quite literally, I think, over half of the game. Neither team seemed to show up there. It was a very defensive game. But yeah, pretty boring.
I guess the Seahawks covered the spread, so I guess that's what anybody cares about, right?
Fair enough. What was it? There's what was some of the drama that I heard of? There was the Stephon Diggs. He turned his back to the national anthem again. He got in trouble for that before. And now I think on the 17th or around the 14th or something, he's got a court case. They changed it so he can play in the Super Bowl. So that was very nice of him. It's nice how rich and famous people get such leniency when it comes to the law, right?
What is it? What is the charge? What did he do?
I forget actually. I think it was like bad. That's what it was. I think he was choking someone. Okay, here we go. Allegations. The incident allegedly involves Diggs smacking the victim and attempting to choke her with his elbow following a dispute over payment. And that was his private chef.
Sounds like a nice guy.
Yeah. And then there was one other thing. It's not coming up now. So strangulation or suffocation and misdemeanor assault and battery, felony charges. And there was one, and then he's involved in some other, I think, civil cases. So that's nice. He loses the Super Bowl and might go to jail now. So I can't remember all the other dramas, but obviously, I mean, come on. There was the halftime show, right? Whether you're entertained by the entertainment of it or just how bad it was, you were definitely entertained. But I noticed a lot of interesting symbolisms because obviously you get into this stuff and eventually you realize that you kind of got to pay attention to things like Grammy performances and Super Bowl halftime shows, because obviously they're slipping a lot of shit in there that might not want you to see. So this woman, who I believe is Puerto Rican, I think she makes that fairly clear. She put out an interesting video summing up some of the halftime show, so I thought I'd show it before we jump into anything. Here we go.
I want to talk specifically about the political references in this halftime show that really got me. So starting off, we're in the sugarcane fields of Puerto Rico, just diving right into the historical context of colonialism in the Caribbean, the history of slavery in the Caribbean, the exploitation of our land and our natural resources for the economic gain of the empire. Now we're in New York City, Nueva York. And then Benito just waltzes up to go take a shot with who? Doñita. Who's Doñita? This is a real Puerto Rican woman who lives in Brooklyn and owns something called the Caribbean Social Club, which is one of the last standing Puerto Rican establishments in Williamsburg, which has been a hugely gentrified neighborhood of New York City, which was always traditionally Puerto Rican. She herself has almost been kicked out many times, but refuses to sell. She's an icon of fighting gentrification in Nueva York. The part of the show that hit us Boricuas the hardest, Ricky Martin.
Quieren quitarme el río y también la playa, quieren el barrio mío y que abuelita se vaya. No, no, suelte la bandera ni olvide el Lenolai, que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawái.
Ricky Martin from Puerto Rico just sang a Bad Bunny song saying, I don't want to happen to us what happened to Hawaii. A blatant call for independence and sovereignty and decolonization of Puerto Rico. And then we go straight into this. Actually simulated the problems with our power grid in Puerto Rico, which is a direct consequence of us being a colony, and the privatization of our power grid by the USA. Then Bad Bunny emerges from the fields carrying the Puerto Rican flag, but not just any Puerto Rican flag. This is the light blue Puerto Rican flag, which is the original colors. And this is the flag that they banned. And then we were only allowed to get our flag back when they changed it from light blue to that navy royal blue to match the blue in the American flag. But by waving this flag, this is our original flag, again referencing our own sovereignty.
Mi patria, Puerto Rico. Seguimos aquí.
And ending it with Seguimos aquí, which means we're still here. Even though you're trying to colonize us and gentrify us out of our own island, Seguimos aquí.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. Honestly, I noticed the first thing I noticed, obviously, the first thing I noticed was the sugarcane fields and the slaves and everything. And the first thing that came to my mind was like, okay, so if the artist was black, we would be in the cotton fields, right? Is that what I'm feeling? Like, it's so ridiculous. They can throw that stuff in your face. And by the way, I got called a racist for like pointing that out. So if you point it out, you're a racist. But if you're the ones purporting it and doing it, like, you know, it doesn't fucking matter at all. So I thought that was an interesting video, quite interesting. Mike, what do you think? What do you pick out of that?
I mean, so Super Bowl is traditionally this big American pastime. Like, hey, let's get together and celebrate these American traditions. And they show Puerto Ricans being exploited and make it about like American decolonialism. What this seems to me is like it's gasoline out of the fire of our discourse with because here's the thing, like I'm not entirely for colonialization or imperialism. I'd say I'm more against those things generally, but anti-colonialism's race with Marxism essentially. So this is pushing Marxist revolutionary sentiments in the culture, and now you have blue team versus red team fighting more. And this is right once the Epstein files are being released, where there's also a bunch of like conflicting framing devices. So it looks to me like they wanna balkanize the public, have us fighting over things while completely missing the big picture. So that's what I think it's about.
Yeah. Definitely. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, especially in the context of like having this other Super Bowl halftime, this culture war dialectic, where there were like two different ones, and one was like super patriotic and goofy, and the other one was like overtly critical. So it's
America bad, yeah. Go America and America bad, yeah.
And it's interesting too, because like in Puerto Rico there was all that controversy around like Trump's response in 2017. I think it was that in 2017 or 2019 when they had that big hurricane, and he like threw out the paper towels in the press conference, and it was like a big controversy. Oh yeah, this was like a big thing, like they're having like a big national crisis.
Into the crowd, you mean?
He throws like a roll of paper towels, kind of.
Here we go. Let's I haven't seen this, so let's show it. I'm sure it's entertaining.
But yeah, that was a big controversy with Puerto Rico a few years ago.
So okay, so he's in Puerto Rico, right?
Right.
Throws out. Okay. Okay.
But,
so
people were outraged by that a few years ago.
What was the specific outrage over that?
that like the response,
disrespectfully throwing them?
No, the like the response, to like this major catastrophe was, oh, we're just gonna like give y'all some paper towels.
Okay. I mean, yeah. I mean, do we know that that's all he did?
I think that the whole thing was that there was like really delayed response to the hurricane, and that there was a lot of devastation, and that was kind of like fuel for the fire, and there's a lot of like culture war stuff around that. That was in his first term.
The culture war around Trump's activity actually I think was worse during the first term, because now it's like we've got so much bull crap going on that like people don't care as much about what Trump does, but it's like Trump could blow his nose and the media would make people outraged about it. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
It definitely has changed, like the presentation.
It's interesting, like how many times I see articles about like, oh my God, Trump is like delirious and out of his mind and like worse than Joe Biden in this press conference. And I watch the press conference and it's like, what? Like, no, he's fine. There's no news in that. Like it's such clickbait. Or like he'll be. I remember once he was like showing photos of different criminals that were arrested, and they picked on him for that. Like, you like the guy, hate the guy. Let them do their presentations of information to the media how they want. I think the issue is that we should be getting truth, not worried about like, oh, he's flipping cue cards and flashcards up. It's like, what does that fucking matter? And just going back to the Super Bowl, the culture war and the two different halftime shows, and just the hypocrisy. Like, they're making fun of Kid Rock's lyrics, and more than making fun of it, they're calling attention to it because like he talks about a lot of sex and sluts and underage girls and and just greasy stuff. But go translate some of Bad Bunny's things. He's talking about sex and sluts, and I mean, his values don't seem all that much better than Kid Rock's. And you think Bad Bunny doesn't do drugs? Get the fuck out of here. So yeah, that was interesting. Like, just like, it's nice that the Super Bowl's over now, so I don't have to keep hearing about Bad Bunny. So let's get on with the nonsense, right? Anyways,
I personally had never heard of him until they announced that he was going to be on the Super Bowl.
I heard of him like a few months prior, and that's just because I in a Latin dance group, and they like him because he does Latin music, right? But if I hadn't, then I wouldn't know who the fuck he is either. So interesting choice for Jay-Z to not only push him but double down when there was so much flack, and then put on that display of symbolism is it's wild. So Mike, what have you got for us today? I think you want to talk to us a little bit about like antiquity, going back into like royal and bloodline families, big families, elite families, stuff like that. Where is the best place to start, my friend?
Well, it's interesting because we brought up Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is going to come up later. Puerto Rico is going to come up later with Medici, because the first ever like major crypto bank to come up that's named a Medici Bank is in Puerto Rico, and it's built over like this Jesuit monastery, and Brock Pierce was there. But before we get into that, I'd say where you want to start is late antiquity, because this is where histories can get a little bit obscure. Because Rome, one of the reasons why we have so many histories from Rome is, first of all, because like most of the histories that we have from them are like empire sponsored propaganda to instill the right martial virtues in the public. It's like if you look at the Aeneas versus the Iliad, it's like it's the kind of values in the Iliad originally were like about love and forgiveness and things like that. But then the Aeneas was rewritten to be about like revenge, valor, martial virtues, and it's pretty interesting because Virgil, who wrote the Aeneas, he was pretty much being dictated by Augustus to write it. So Augustus, in a way, was like the ghostwriter for it. And then towards the end of Virgil's life, he was like, hey, cast the Aeneas to the flames. I don't really like it, because he's like, hey, this is being used to fuel a war machine, right? He's probably like, I'm on my deathbed, I don't feel too good about that. And Augustus is like, nah, it's fine the way it is. But yeah, like the reason why I'm pointing that out is because like you don't want to take Roman history at face value. It's like you're gonna get some basic facts right, but a lot of the framing is going to be pretty off, and it's because they're using the exact same kind of population control, dialectics, perception control, cultural manipulation. They're using those exact same kind of methodologies that they're using now. And it would be like, oh, hey, we're coming into your area. Here's our legions. But, oh, wow, you have a god of war? So do you. So do we. You have a fertility goddess? Wow, so do we. Like, we're pretty much practicing the same thing. We're pretty much the same culture. So, hey, like, we have these aqueducts, we have these engineering projects, we have these logistics. So here, you're going to prosper and you're going to be able to have a lot of kids. So, but those kids are going to go to our war machine, give us legions, and pay your taxes. Everything's going to be fine. But if you don't, then we're gonna send our legions, and you're going to be screwed. And that kind of model of conquest isn't really sustainable for the long term. And I mean, Rome, people, there's a lot of myths around the Dark Ages and stuff. And one of the ideas that like Rome was kind of about like science, and it's in a lot of ways they had these innovations which were ahead of the ancient world, but when they started using this for conquest, they really stagnated. It's like Rome didn't really have any serious innovations for like 1,000 years. And it's because they were pretty much an anti-culture. They're an anti-culture that throws corrosive acid in the culture of all the places that it ends up conquering and just integrates it into this giant monoculture. But doesn't that sound kind of familiar, like with the so-called American Empire and CIA culture? It's like and then with modern art and architecture, it's like they're taking it to a whole new level beyond where Rome ever took it. But like it's rinse and repeat the same methodologies. But yeah, that's really not good for innovation, creativity, and actually there's a sense in which like Rome was against scientific progress because they're like, well, this is actually bad for stability. So you eventually had like an equivalent of corporatism and like this proto-communist cartel-like economy that just was completely unsustainable, and they weren't able to collect taxes adequately. They weren't able to raise legions. Eventually, had to like rent out a bunch of these Germanic barbarians. But while this was going on, and while you had the Germans being used as mercenaries for the army, and then you had later Germanic incursions, and you had Germans breaking up the former Roman territories. You can actually find the Germanic kings intermarrying with the core of these Roman aristocrats, rather in Rome itself, rather in southern France. And southern France, so when Rome fell, it's because, like I said, like these methods of conquest weren't sustainable. So eventually the logistics that was holding these cities together, because like one of the reasons why they were able to produce a bunch of histories is because they were more of an urban kind of a city-based society, and that's where literature comes from. That's where educational institutions come from. So the places that suffered the least deurbanization would actually be in France. So I've posted genealogies where you can trace Charlemagne back to the House of Piso, who was Caesar's wife's father, as well as Augustus' daughter. So Charlemagne, who's a major dynastic bottleneck for all the European royals, he's literally descended from like the core of the Roman Empire. So back to what I was saying, like there's this popular idea where it's like, oh well, you know, if Rome didn't fall, like look, they had these early versions of steam engines, something you can compare to steam engines. Oh look, they had something that could be compared to a computer. It's like you could look it up. Caesar did have like this proto computer, and it was used more for like
really?
navigation and things like that. But there's this idea that if Rome didn't fall, we would have had all this scientific progress and we'd be on Mars by now. But actually, like if you actually look at innovations, you had more innovations happen right after the fall of Rome in the early so-called Dark Ages. It's like so it's like I said, also you didn't have all these roads connecting all these places where you had these advanced logistics. Like a lot of the trade routes did fall apart. You did have mass population decline, but a lot of that was in the 500s. So part of that's because you had Justinian's plague. You had a lot of natural disasters causing famine and things like that. But after this, it's like you saw a lot of hill forts being built because since you don't have Pax Romana, you have a lot of these splintered proto-nation states fighting each other. And I'd actually say that right there is why Europe end up running the world, though, because you have all these places competing against each other. You have all this competition, and that pushes innovation. Whereas like after China's empire fell, it's like you might have new people groups taking things over, and you might have some competition between ethnicities, but overall it's like you have one giant monoculture that just absorbs barbarians being replaced by another. So like with China, you just kept having barbarians being absorbed and integrated into the military. Where with Rome, the barbarians came and splintered apart these different competing kingdoms. And I'd say actually that's why Europe ended up running everything and China didn't. But when China looks over at us, they're like, we've had 4,000 years of continuous civilization. You guys over in the West are a bunch of upstarts. So like they look at that and they think it's a bad thing. But I actually think it's the other way around. But yeah, sorry, I went over a lot of history, but the point I was trying to make with that, while also dispelling a couple of misconceptions, is just that if you go back to late antiquity and look at these family trees, and there's other family trees we don't have records of in places like England and places like Italy, where with the deurbanization, you had much less record keeping. So it's like there's a lot of people who claim descent from this or that people. It's like you have the Massimo family, for instance, claiming descent from the Roman Maximus clan, but it's like you can't prove that. But if you look at the way records were kept in cities and deurbanization, collapse of Roman era institutions, you wouldn't expect there to be records of that kind of thing either. But yeah, any comments or questions? Because I kind of threw a lot at you.
No, keep spitting, dude.
Oh,
Like, we're getting there.
All right, yeah. So one thing that I think is pretty interesting. So what I was saying about the Rome's means of conquest by integrating other cultures into Rome's monoculture. Originally, their monoculture was centered around virtues like Stoicism, which would be used to overall promote like martial virtues for maintaining a war machine. I'd say so. Edward Gibbon argues that Christianity weakened these martial virtues. I think he overstates that case a little bit, because like Eastern Rome was able to maintain military dominance, and they actually innovated militarily. It's like Rome for a while didn't have cavalry and archers, but the Eastern Roman Empire was able to integrate that, and they ended up being pretty successful until you had the rise of Islam. But it's because there were a lot of these cultural variables where their Christianity created this strong in-group preference, and they had a lot of these like heretic sects come up, and later on Islam, like a lot of these external threats where Christianity was used to unite them. So the idea that Christianity is completely incompatible with martial virtues I don't think it's all that. I think he overstates it, but in the West, I think you can make a better case for that, but I just point that out because there are caveats and complexities to get into, and a lot of reasons that why these things happen differently that I can't really get into. But you do have Jesus saying things like, turn the other cheek. You do have passages that I don't think teach pacifism, but can end up implying pacifistic principles. And it definitely did conflict with Rome's martial virtues, especially in the West. And what you end up seeing though in the West is, when I was talking about how they'd go out and say, "Oh yeah, you're worshiping the same gods as us," Rome actually ended up doing this with Germanic culture. They'd integrate Germanic kind of figures in their version of the pantheon. Be like, instead of mixing them with Roman gods, they'd make new patron saints, absorb them into this kind of patron saint system, and eventually they end up like absorbing Germanic warrior culture into Christian culture. That's where you get the synthesis of warrior monks from. So there is a shift from Christianity being more pacifistic in the West to being more of this kind of warrior monk culture from. And that's where I'd say you actually end up getting the whole Crusader culture from, because like if you look at the Crusaders, it's like you had a lot of Crusaders being drawn from places like Sicily, from southern Italy. You have a lot of Crusaders being drawn from France. And yeah, that's because like Vikings came down and conquered Sicily. So it's like a lot of these Crusaders, they're literally like the grandchildren of Vikings who end up being civilized by like a combination of Latin and Arab institutions. And oh my gosh, yeah, like the Islam is a big component to all this, because like Germanics end up creating the university system in the West, but they got it from Islamic culture. And Germanics would end up taking Arab last names to show, oh, look, we have academic prestige. We're well studied. Well, because Arabs and Islamic culture were actually seen as like the highest sophisticated culture at the time, and they were definitely more advanced than Western Europe at the time. Like, and I think one thing that can happen a little bit is I think people overstate how authoritarian the early Middle Ages were. It's the governments were actually really small at this time. It's like the king would kind of be like riding around, going to different towns, kind of like giving them orders. But the king and central government really didn't have that much power. And it's interesting because like if you look at bone structure and look at remains of people from their bodies that we have, it's like we can tell that people were like more well muscled, were getting higher heights, living longer from like the 800s to early 1100s and later on the Middle Ages. And I think part of it's because you had a really small government, and and part of it's because you end up having threats like Vikings, Muslims, Magyars from Hungary coming over, and you had a lot of these external threats. So it's like at first like the people didn't really need big governments. Eventually, it's like that's where the feudal system came from. It's like, well, you need to have protection. So here we're gonna create this chivalry. We're gonna create these chivalric institutions, these knightly institutions, unites. You're able to get land, and eventually, like it became protection rackets. It became very extractive. It became much more like authoritarian and redistribution, like distributistic, like, you know, distributism, kind of like fascism, socialism. We can think around those lines. That's where some of the abuse happen. Where people are like, oh, look at how bad feudalism is. Like feudalism's like that more happened later, and also at times where we had more like written records, but it wasn't always that bad, I don't think. But yeah, these knightly institutions that came up at this time and became these kind of protection rackets, and they were partly spurned on by external threats. These institutions were built by the descendants of these families going back to ancient Rome, and these institutions are what end up developing our modern banking infrastructure. It's like the ability to cash checks in one location, and you put that deposit in, then you can pull that money out at another location. That was an innovation by the Knights Templar, actually. And it's pretty interesting that if you look at the map of where you could deposit checks in a bank and pull them out, there's a good bit of overlap with the former Roman Empire territories and the territories the Knights Templar had, where you could do that. So, you know, that's something that's pretty interesting. But yeah, so if you look at the succession of institutions from ancient Rome to now, there's a good bit of continuity, but there's also a lot of continuity from the Islamic world. But you can actually make a claim, though, that during the Muslim Golden Age, Islamic culture was more of a successor to Greco-Roman culture than Northern Europe became. Because remember what I said with the Germanization of like Christianity, the Germanization of the West. It's like I'd say culturally, Western Europe kind of became its own new thing, and Islamic culture. If you look at how like families were run, if you look at how social sentiments worked, and how like how the family relates to society, the state, all this stuff. Islamic civilization resembles ancient Roman Greece more than Western Europe does right now, I'd say. But like I said earlier, though, the kind of institutions like a joint stock market, universities, those actually came from Islamic civilization. And what's pretty interesting is Islamic civilization ended up declining around the time where Europe started surpassing them, and I think a big reason for this is you know how right now we're having a lot of atheists. They want to experiment around with things like communism and socialism, and those end up crashing civilizations. You actually end up having that in the Islamic world back then. It's like a lot of people don't talk about this. Like they look at Islamic culture as like, oh, it's always been like really hardline. It's always been like really hardline, reactionary, conservative. That's not really all that true. It's like you had a lot of Hermeticists, Gnostics, and even atheists like running institutions at the time, and a lot of them actually practice homosexuality and debauchery. And what you and you even had like a lot of women in power, a lot of like influential female philosophers and stuff. So what you had come in response to that was you actually had a reactionary conservative kind of movement. That's what took it over. So when you hear like Islam is oppressive to women, Islam's bigoted, Islam has this strong in-group preference, it wasn't always like that. That's more from reactionaries taking over. But you also had a lot of steppe invaders come in, like Mongols and Tatars. And what's interesting about the steppe, like the steppe would be the whole Central Asia area. It's this kind of like nomadic frontier culture. But what's pretty interesting is that it either goes in the direction of extremely authoritarian or they become super liberal. It's like, because one of the reasons why America became what it is because we came over from these colonies and there was a giant frontier where we could expand in. Like I'd say that made us even more liberal than England was, right? But and also what's interesting is when the Mongolians end up getting sort of this a little taste of industrialization, a little bit of an industrial infrastructure backbone, they end up adopting a constitution that's a lot like the American. So like the Mongols went from like this conquering extractive empire to like one of the more liberal societies in the world, which is pretty interesting also. But yeah, I can also go like super authoritarian. And I'd say yeah, when it comes to the decline of Islamic civilization, I definitely say that it was that whole steppe anti-culture being injected into there, and it ended up going the more authoritarian route. But yeah, so back to Western Europe though. In Western Europe, you end up having more conditions for industrialization in place, especially over in England, than you ever really had in Islamic civilization. There's a lot of people going, oh, could have, like, Islamic civilization was the most advanced and complex society in the world for a while. Could it have industrialized? There's a lot of different answers on it, and I'm not really an expert, but the answer that I'll give is, I think that the only place it could have possibly happened probably is England. I think it's an interesting variety of like, you have a synthesis of Latin and Arab institutions that make it like legal, financial, educational institutions that went up to Europe, but also Germanic culture is extremely individualistic, and there's a reason why I had modern capitalism come from England and not other places. So I think it's a synthesis of those institutions with this unique aspect of Germanic culture combined with like the whole Celtic freedom fighter culture, as well as that mix being isolated from the rest of Europe, which had really complex international affairs. But like, England's often this own island over there that allowed for it to industrialize. And yeah, so there's a whole lot of I'm skipping over. It's because like so one of the things that I'd say Islamic civilization and Greece and Rome actually had in common, which sets them apart from Western Europe, is those were still slave economies. Those were slave economies, but I'd say that slavery and human trafficking, even with these more liberal economies and societies that developed in Western Europe, I'd say that slavery and things like human trafficking always have been the backbone of economies. Now that's not something I'm gonna see mainstream historians say, especially about the West, but like, with the kind of things that I want to be getting into and that Habsburg Jolly West and I look into, human trafficking's never gone away. In fact, human trafficking right now is probably even worse than it was during this transatlantic slave trade period. But yeah, that's something I wanted to point out, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to go back from late antiquity, look at the development of institutions, and loosely connect them to today, show a continuity. And slavery is definitely a big component to that. But yeah, like on paper, we had slavery abolished, and it's not as bad in Western Europe. But like, yeah, speaking of like the Vikings, it's like you can find a continuity of slavery routes and human trafficking routes going from Cornwall and Sicily, which are still around under the House of Smith, by the way. You can find a direct continuity of that going back to the Vikings. Like the Vikings were all up in Cornwall for these like copper and tin mines, and then they went down to Sicily, and you had these human trafficking pipelines from like North Africa over to Sicily, up into England, all the way back then, the Anglo-Saxon times, and that's still going on now. So I don't want to steal thunder from one of my friends. One of my friends on Twitter, though, he's writing a paper. He's writing a paper showing the English conquest of the British Isles of, it's not Sicily. It's close to Cornwall. It's close to Cornwall, but it's spelled similar to Sicily. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about? Like the
No.
Cilia. It might be Cilia.
Okay.
Yeah, but
yeah.
pretty much Augustus Smith went in there and he raped a couple of local women, or raped some servant women, and essentially created this cult from bastard children. And that he's proving that now that the Smith family like still uses this cult to like kidnap people, and you even have tourists going missing. And a recent case for this, and I've actually posted this.
Is that Darren that's working on that?
Yes.
Yeah.
How'd you know that? Yeah. How did he tell you about it?
We talk a little bit. Yeah. He's pretty
Darren's
awesome.
working on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds pretty crazy.
Yeah, but what happened is you had a tourist actually go missing and be found murdered, that went missing at a bar that Tristan Smith, a descendant of Augustus Smith, was at. And it's then, oh my gosh, like, hey, let's look in the Smith guy. Nope, you can't do that. It's like the Cornwall police. Oh, we did an autopsy. That's suicide. No, that's bullshit. We're going to finance their own autopsy. No, that's not suicide. Okay, Cornwall police, look into this. The Cornwall, no, we can't do it. We already had our autopsy. So yeah, like it's, yeah. There's crazy stuff going on. Yeah.
So from that point, kind of like deeper in antiquity, kind of to like, bridging into, where we're at now, where did these like dynastic families, come in? How did they develop, in Italy, in Western Europe, and how are they like still active now? How do they interact with each other? How do they interact with institutions? What are the geographical kind of like important places? Yeah.
Okay, so how they stayed around would be through strategic intermarriages, and I'd say it's not absolute. Like you have someone from a high-ranking family, and automatically their descendants are going to be high-ranking too. It's like you can have powerful families fall out, like lose wealth through things like incompetence, but a lot of times what you have is like a disgruntled non-heir will be joining these secret societies and spreading occultic tentacles across a lot of institutions, while like their brother that's a duke, king, or prince or something is a jackass and ends up squandering things. I know, but so Habsburg was like lesser nobility that end up marrying into larger nobility, and because they were really competent and methodologically sound, they were promoted to bigger and bigger levels of management. But also, one of the things they did is they'd marry into wives of more wealthy families, but a lot of times the wives would end up dead. It's like, hey, you know, there's probably you can't prove it, but there's probably some poisoning or foul play going on. They'd end up inheriting holdings. I'd say one of the things is through things like that. And at the time of the Black Death, you had like, it seems like you had poisoning of wells, people spraying stuff on crops, and then you had wills being falsified, going over to monastic military orders type things. And this is right after the Knights Templar were suppressed. And then right after that, you have like Medici and Borgia, for instance, like they're in institutions that are related to the Knights Templar, and they have descendants who are there. Then all of a sudden, like they come out with prominent positions like Pope, big banks. But yeah, so like I think it makes sense if you look at it like, okay, going back to late antiquity, it's like you have these Germanics coming in from maybe Ukraine, from the steppe, and they make their way in the Balkans, and they start making their way into Italy. Well, like if you look at it from the perspective of politics and the fact that people at higher levels have a lot of informal lines of communication, and if there's collusion, you're not going to want to talk about it. It's like if you're, if there's two sides and the lower level ranking people from both those sides are killing each other, it's like you're gonna if there's collusion with the elites, it makes sense that they're gonna want to make reports like, oh yeah, all of us are enemies. When even if you look at the mainstream history, though, it's like you see a lot of these figures on both those sides, they end up intermarrying. And sometimes you'll have like stories like, oh wow, they're held in ransom, or it was against their will. I think a lot of that's bullcrap stories, but I think it's from a position of statecraft and expediency, where it's just you have people at a certain level recognizing power and recognizing, well, hey, it's better if we collude and coordinate, and it'll help both of us up. And that doesn't mean there's always perfect collusion between inner rings for both of these sides, but eventually what you end up getting is you end up getting new cultures and new institutions coming up from unions like that, and those take on lives of their own. And then once you get into the high society level, that becomes its own self-perpetuating ecosystem as well, and it's just going to keep on consolidating, and sometimes it becomes too extractive and cartel-like, and it has to go back underground and rebrand. But what it seems like what they're trying to do right now is, it seems like around the time of the French and American Revolution, they were like, shit, we're gonna have to rebrand and go underground, or we're all going to be lynched. So it seems like what they did is like, okay, well, we're going to have backdoor these institutions, and we're going to give these societies middle class and really big economies, and we're going to try and leech off that and create this technology. And like you even see this, people like John Dee and Francis Bacon kind of like planning this out to a certain extent. Like let's have spies. Let's have spies in these other areas that are supposedly independent, but let's scope out their technology and integrate these innovations to become masters of the universe. That's the kind of language that Francis Bacon uses. But what I think they're trying to do with this is give enough freedom to allow surplus production, because surplus production and good economies do correspond to freedom. But then once that like things, new variables like AI and robotics are going to allow for production without freedom. So what I think they want to do is create a kind of ecosystem with AI, robotics, 15-minute cities, smart surveillance, smart cities, all this bull crap.
Cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, to where that becomes the new lever to where the cartel can just be a cartel out in the open and control the population, keep the population at whatever level it wants. And the ultimate goal is to insulate the cartel and that more elite ecosystem from any consequences, where they can pretty much just do whatever the hell they want. That's what I think they're going for.
So, like a lot of the research that you do is into, these bloodlines that are like active, that we're starting to see, like, on social media and things like this, that they're kind of like starting to show their hand and like, demonstrate like who they are. You track a lot of them, and like who are the real like players right now that are kind of emerging, as kind of being these, cartel operators, I should say.
Bourbon, definitely, like, the king of Spain, the king of France. Well, he's technically not the king of France, but it's like, you have the king of France, Louis the 20th, come out and saying, "Oh my gosh, France is entering into crisis, and I'll be glad to step out as king." You have the Medicis, obviously, with Lorenzo Medici and these social media knights. Yeah, because Lorenzo Medici, he has this Knights Templar order called San Martino, and he's got all these developers for like AI, cryptocurrency coming into it, and he's got these like young Hollywood celebrities coming into it. Yeah, so the youngest ever papal knight is a Medici knight. Like there's her name's Sydney Thackeray, so you can look up Sydney Thackeray, youngest ever papal knight. How a female knight works, who knows? Like, I don't really care. And other ones, Kelowna, Colombo, Columbus, Collins, those are all derived. So if you see like really big elite players in American politics, last name Collins, or American finance, they're probably Kelownas. Just a name change. Colombo crime family, that's Kelowna. You have ones with British last names like Russell, founder of Jehovah's Witnesses is one. Bertrand Russell, the atheist philosopher. Oh yeah, let me add, like, a lot of times when you have famous era-defining philosophers, especially when it's around philosophies like ends justify the means, Jeremy Bentham, utilitarianism, a lot of these guys are high-level dynastic players. Like they're not just like these theology nerds a lot of the time. So, sometimes you might have that where it's just like some theology nerd or something becomes really famous, but usually that's not an accident. Usually they're being promoted for some kind of statecraft. Smith, there's not just one Smith line. I'll say that. Like Smith is a kind of mundane name that translates to a blacksmith or smithing, like craftsman. So it's sometimes in like notorious families will change locations. They'll just change their name to something. So there's probably like 3 or 4 different dynastic families from different lines that have the last name Smith. You have like the Clementi Smiths, like the Carrington Smiths, but Joseph Smith is definitely from the dynasty. So like, yeah, these cults come from the dynasty. Oh yeah, with Kelowna, you had a lot of connections to like DARPA and Scientology, to the House of Kelowna. And yeah, we can get into some of that a little bit with the whole Mimetics. But yeah, I'd say the ones at the top, when you're looking at the really high end players, it's mostly going to be British and Italian last names, and then you're also going to have a good bit of French, German, and even some Slavic last names in there at the really high levels also. But yeah, it's mostly Italian and British last names, I'd say. Oh yeah, Livingston's another one. Livingston, yeah. There's tons I'm leaving out. Oh yeah, Massimo. Obviously, they're really big, and they show up in the Epstein circle, the Epstein stuff, like going to these Epstein supplier charities, like Naomi Campbell's Child at Heart. Yeah, yeah. We can go into Naomi Campbell and Heidi Klum too if you want, because there's a lot to talk about there.
Well, it's interesting. Just going back a second when you mentioned Bertram Russell, especially like their family is the Russell family is the Duke of Bedford, and like
Marquis
in
of
their
Tavistock and the Marquis of Tavistock.
that's where I was going with that, right? Exactly. And actually, what's really interesting too is they commissioned Sir Francis Drake, who was, from the town of Tavistock, and he was the founded, basically like New Albion in Northern California, and where all of the like the American Tavistock is run out of. So he ended up in Point Reyes on the Marin Peninsula, and Marin is one of the social engineering like epicenters. So it's this has been in that family has been going on for 400 years, and the American branch of that family started Yale and Skull and Bones, and I mean it's just the Russells are really interesting. Jehovah's Witnesses, yeah, exactly.
All these cults, and you can probably add to this. All these cults, I don't think the Illuminati really exists, but we can just call it the Illuminati for simplicity. All the cults are pretty much rings and ring shells for the Illuminati.
Yep.
Like
Jehovah's they're all the same cult.
Mormons, yeah.
Chabad,
yeah. Well, Chabad's like Chabad used to just be another one of these Hasidic dynasties, and then around the 50s under Rabbi Schneerson, it became a messianic cult. But Chabad wasn't always like that, though. I don't think it used to be pretty, like mundane, yeah.
But yeah, Schneerson brought in like this whole kind of like subtext of like aliens, ancient stuff that really like corresponds with Scientology, stuff that corresponds with like the inner Mormon doctrine, stuff like this. It's really interesting, and a lot of folks like don't realize how big that plays in with Chabad, and that they're really like a ancient alien cargo cult like these other organizations.
Nation of Islam has right. That mothership. Right. A lot of people like think like the sci-fi elements come with Yaku, but like Nation of Islam has the UFO stuff in there too, and like they merge with Scientology like 2011 and 2012, where you had like 700 key Nation of Islam become Dianetic odders, and Dianetics has pretty much an application of neuro-linguistic programming, where they say like, oh, we're helping you get rid of your body thetans or body it's such nonsense. Like these leftover souls of these bad guys, or these guys who are imprisoned by Zenu and then chained to volcanoes where they dropped hydrogen bombs on it, and then their souls were sucked up by electromagnetic vacuums and trapped into a Gnostic prison of bodies and reincarnation. Like and supposedly the Dianetic odding is supposed to help you get rid of those and free your body, but it's such nonsense.
Well, and they're also using the e-meter and using like electromagnetism in their whole process, combining it with the neuro-linguistic programming, and that's kind of like the kind of like secret key, I think, is whatever those e-meter things are actually doing right. in the process.
What do you think the e-meters are doing? I mean, really?
I mean, I don't know. I've never used one, obviously, but I mean, they do send like an electric current through the body while somebody's being like programmed neurolinguistically, right? They're being conditioned. They're also being like forced to like go back, like go back through personal memories and like do all this like, confessional stuff. And, so there is some kind of, physiological response to those electric currents that is a really key component, like obviously. But I don't know, I'll never hold the cans personally.
Not those
Yeah, I'm
ones
just
anyway.
grabbing some water.
Yeah, man, no worries, no worries. Yeah, those machines kind of creepy. I mean, you think they could be reading things as well, body levels, temperatures, heart rate,
Right.
knows what else, right?
Right. I mean, they're definitely monitoring, some kind of feedback from the body too.
Yeah,
Because they
I would
do
think
have
so.
like the readouts, but yeah, it goes both ways. I mean, it's transmitting some kind of frequency and it's, receiving data, at the same time. Whenever you get ready, Mike, like since you did mention Prince Lorenzo, and you done a lot of great research and it seems really topical, with what's going on now. We did the intro with the Puerto Rico halftime. Like, can we get into it? Medici Bank and what we've uncovered in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, so Medici, this I've done a video on this, but to summarize, the Medici's came from a network of pirates that I think are leftovers from Knights Templar. Because remember, like when the Knights Templar were suppressed, you had these missing fleets of ship. Then you had these pirate ships come up with this Templar crosses on them. Then you end up getting like a pirate pope that Medici end up helping install. Yeah, it was Giovanni Medici who bankrolled a pirate pope, and then eventually like they ended up subverting a bunch of institutions to where they became papal bankers, but also produced like 4 popes and 2 queens of France. And
that banking infrastructure was from the Templars, right? I mean,
yeah. Not officially. It's hard to prove that. It's hard to prove that officially, but in my mind, the connection is pretty strong. And I also think it has to do with the aftermath, the Black Death, because like you had a lot of retransferring of assets going on. Then also it's like the Renaissance were known as a time of prosperity, but that's partly because the Black Death created the conditions for capitalism and a rising middle class. Because it's like in the 1200s when we had proto-capitalism developing under the Knights Templar and their banking and stuff, populations were more stationary. It's like usually like average people wouldn't travel more than like 15 miles their whole life, maybe less than that. But when the Black Death came around, like you had a majority of the population dying. But so overall, because that wealth overall shrunk, but wealth inequality decreased too. So you had people, so the people who were staying alive, like the average distance you travel in their life massively blew up. It's like you have people like going across France, like maybe even sometimes from like Eastern Europe to Western Europe. And part of it's like, hey, there's all your workers are dying, so I have all the leverage. You want me to work for you? Well, let me dictate more terms. So that created conditions for a rising middle class, and that's where the backdrop of prosperity that the Renaissance is known for also came from. Because like once you have those conditions in place, and then once the plague and a lot of these really bad conditions and really shitty things people in the 1300s had to deal with went away, it's like you're gonna have creation conditions for a better economy, for population surplus. So I'd say that's partly where the Medici banks came in. They innovated double end bookkeeping, and that's the kind of thing they're famous for. But I still think they were fudging numbers and playing mafia game. Obviously, they're playing mafia games. It's like Ottaviano wanted to shut down the show Medici because they they depicted the Medici family as like running mafias that were active all over Europe, and that's because it's like real history, and he didn't really like that much. But yeah, like, you know, what you're looking at there is you're looking at wealth being extracted from average people that put their trust in banking. It's like you didn't really have central banks back then, but these Medici banks, because it's like, you know, that's a lot of Catholic tithes get funneled through there, and everyone at the time is Catholic. It's, you know, it's pretty much the same thing, but like central banks don't really come up until you have the social construct of nation states. And I do think nation states are a social construct. Like nations and nation states aren't really like this. It's like obviously nations have kind of always been around, but like nation states are a little bit of a newer thing. But yeah, like that Medici is known as bankers. They're also known as very corrupt and having mafia-like tactics. And because of that, and also I'd say because of the Duke of Tuscany's incompetence, they end up tarnishing their reputation. They had to go underground, but like you actually see them setting up Rothschild over in Naples, where Medici had a presence. So their oh yeah, what's funny is their main branch had a lot of women marry into Habsburg Lorraine. So certain branches of Habsburg Lorraine are pretty much a branch of Medici. So when they lost Tuscany, they've already had mutual holdings with Habsburg Lorraine. That's because people with the last name Habsburg Lorraine are pretty much Medici's, just through female heirs. So then guess what? They come down and become the Dukes of Tuscany and become the Dukes of Naples. So, you know, it's pretty much the same family. They just go by Habsburg Lorraine now, but they're still the Dukes of Tuscany right now, the Habsburg Lorraine Medicis. And you could call them Medicis or Habsburgs. Like I'd say they're equally so. They actually have a pretty Italian phenotype. I'd say like mixed Germanic and Italian. I've posted pictures of them. My ex. If you look up Tuscany and look at latest posts, you'll be able to find these guys. But the ones that kept the big clan that kept the last name Medici are known as the Princes of Odigiano, and those are the ones who set up Rothschild over in Naples. Now, people say Rothschild runs the world, but what's interesting is the Naples branch of Rothschild, since the Bourbons of Two Sicily held Naples at the time, when Savoy unified Italy, which formally, for a time being, pushed the Bourbons out of Naples, Rothschild had to shut down their bank to follow the power moves of the Bourbons. So it's like, once you start looking at the details of Rothschild, it's like Rothschild never once took over the Bank of England after Waterloo. It's like you even have well-known researchers like Jay Dyer. So Jay Dyer, he can be pretty solid, but he repeats bullshit like the Rothschild takeover of banks after Waterloo, where like because like, you know, you have like claims like Rothschild was over at the Battle of Waterloo, like, even present at the battle, and it's a lot of like those stories come from a package deal of claims where it's like you can easily disprove a lot of it, but it's like, you know, you did have Rothschild serving a Duke of Wellington, and they profited a good bit after Waterloo, but like, you know, they never took over the City of London, they never took over the Bank of England, stuff like that never happened. But yeah, like
Jay Dyer pushes a lot of that stuff that isn't true. Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I was listening to him with the Epstein stuff. Like he was talking about like he was talking about the Rothschilds, and he's like, oh yeah, well, you know how like they took the Bank of England after Waterloo. Like he was saying it in passing like it was an established fact, but I'm like, well, like, you know, that.
And people listen to these guys, right? Like that. I hate when people throw facts out. I always think like, how sure are they of these facts? So it's interesting that you bring that up, because like Jay Dyer's, I mean, when I first heard of him, he had his 2 Hollywood occult books out. The books were okay. Now he's bigger, I'd say. I think he's got a third book out now, and he's, you know, he's got quite a big following. He's been on a lot of big podcasts. And if he's just spouting shit, how does that help anyone?
I mean,
There's
a lot of that. Go ahead, Mike.
I was saying there's a lot of misinformation on Rothschild. It's like Rothschild's a big deal. Don't get me wrong, but it's like once you look at the details, it's like it's like, wait a second, they're not taking over. It's like you can actually look into Rothschild's own private letters between them, and it's like you'll find sibling squabbles, but you'll find them like talking, like sounding really patriotic for the elite communities are being brought into. Like you see Nathan Rothschild saying like, I'm proud to be of service to the Duke of Wellington, right? Like it doesn't sound like he's bossing these people around. Now,
Okay.
Sometimes though, when he's writing to James Rothschild, for instance, like he'll be like, everyone listens to me. Even kings kiss my ass. But then James is like, shut up, Nathan. No one likes you. It's kind of like sibling squabbles like that. It's kind of like sibling squabbles like that. It's like. So like there are things you can pull out like, see, look, Rothschild says kings list, but it's more like once you look in the context, it's more like brothers talking shit to each other, like, you know, like what you'd expect with like elite siblings that argue with each other. And like some of these, it's like people will say like Rothschild represents Jewish supremacy and stuff like that. It's like, well, like once you look at their communications, you'll find varying levels of religiosity. It's like you'll find some of them like referring to themselves as devout Jews, but then other ones will like mock other family members, calling them rabbi because they're pretty much like atheists. So it's like it's not as so many of the narratives of like the Rothschild conspiracy as them like being this organized Jewish cabal. It's like once you look in their private communication, it's like that's not even possible. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out, though.
And you know, they're like you know, like a convenient like cover operation for like these, you know, families that have actually, you know, maintained their, you know, power like on a kind of like sub rosa level too, right? I mean, Medici and Habsburg and, you know, like
you can prove Rothschild works for families like Hesse and Habsburg, you know. Yeah, like and what's funny is like at times where because it's like, remember, like I said, like these families don't always get their way. It's like the Habsburgs tried creating this concert of Europe that would be like a proto-European union, and it flopped. And you had a lot of people outraged at the Habsburg government. Then you had a couple people like Metternich and also Rothschild themselves becoming scapegoats. So it's like in 1848, you had these series of revolutions, and some of the Habsburg plans flopped. So then you had Rothschild getting expelled and sent to somewhere else, and then you had Metternich, who was like one of their financial advisors. He ended up going to exile, but he went to London where he like pretty much died in luxury. So like that shows you that just that London, rather you're looking at like the Austrian power center or Central Europe, like London's pretty much like the top, I'd say, like financially, politically. I'd say they still are. I'd say like New York finance answers to London finance to this day.
What about Rome?
That's more informal. I'd say they're still top, but like London would be more the top for like formal power. Rome would be more informal, I'd say. Right. Because it's like you do have high level CIA people who are Knights of Malta. You have them meeting in Rome once a year to coordinate with like these other European power centers. So Rome definitely still is a shot caller today, but I'd say it's London. It's easier to prove with London, I'd say.
And Geneva also.
Geneva, Zurich, Basel. I'd say they're all three pretty big. Like Switzerland's just big in general, but I'd say those are from legal privileges given to it by the city of London, though, because it's like the crown. The crown is kind of like the legislative overseer.
Well, and you know, it's interesting too, because like ultimately, like this Habsburg, like pan-European Union that Otto von Habsburg, promoted, like really like exists now is the EU, really. I mean, it did come to fruition in a way. Yeah.
Well, here's what I think. Here's what I think you're gonna start seeing. Remember, did you see the interaction I had with Edward Hasberg on X, where after I taunted him, my account got hacked?
Yeah, I remember.
Oh,
Yeah, I
so
remember
who's
that.
Edward Hadsberg?
Edward Habsburg is he was the ambassador from Hungary to the Holy See. He's one of these Habsburgs. He's like a cousin or nephew to the head of the House of Habsburg, who is Karl von Habsburg. So he's got a lot of connections to Interpol. So I think he texted someone that's high up in Interpol, and they had my account hacked. Like I was able to change my password and get back in after 15 seconds, but like if I didn't immediately get back in there, it's like who knows what would have happened. But I posted screenshots. I posted screenshots showing it, and it was something weird, like only 17 minutes, like a magic hermetic number after I made that post. But what happened was someone posted this map of Yugoslavia, and oh my gosh, where the Balkans are so chaotic. Where's a Habsburg when you need them to unite the Balkans? And Edward Habsburg came in and said, "Oh, we're here and there. We're biding our time." Then someone responded him, "What kind of timetable do you measure?" He said, "I've already said this before. We have plans centuries in the making." So I quoted him, showed here's his uncle Otto von Habsburg with Klaus Schwab creating the World Economic Forum, because the World Economic Forum and Club of Rome are Habsburg creations. So then after that, my account got hacked. But like the reason why I bring that particular one up is because if you look at Orban's Hungary is the one proposing this new kind of monarchist kind of alternative to the European Union. They're like, look, we've got mass migration. We've got all these liberal interests that aren't working for us. And corresponding with this is Operation Christian Nationalism. This will get into Mimetics, because like you're seeing all these like Knights Templar memes, and you're based return to Christendom, but it's fake Gen Z meme Christendom. It's nothing like the OG thing, even if you want that, which you can argue you don't. But yeah, I was just saying this. It's like what I think's going to happen. Just prediction is you're going to see a kind of like new Austria-Hungary. It's going to be like Hungary, and then you're going to have similar territory to Yugoslavia get lumped in there. I think when you start seeing this codification of the world into these like 10 districts or power blocks or economic zones, I think it's actually going to start in the Habsburg heartland, the new Yugoslavia, and then when that model's going to be exported to a lot of places. Maybe it's like you're going to have that North America, like Puerto Rico, America, Canada, Greenland, that'll be a block, and South America is another one. Like I'm sure, like Chatham House and the Club of Rome, which is Chatham House is the English crown, and Club of Rome is Habsburg. You'll see them put out these like varying maps where it's like carving up the world into power blocks or economic zones. It's usually 10 places, but the way the 10 places are cut up can differ a little bit. But yeah, you wanted to say, I think it's going to start. I think it's going to start with the Hazard Heartland. That was what I was getting at. Yeah.
No, I think you're right, and I think that what's really interesting, since you mentioned this kind of like neo-Templar, Christian nationalist movement that's being seeded on social media. I mean, it's a social media based mimetic movement. But Otto von Habsburg was funding the Dignitatis Humanitae Institute, which is like really one of the kind of like places that this has been seeded from, right? And where like they were planning with Steve Bannon to open up this kind of like training facility in a Italian monastery. That was all DHI, and Otto von Habsburg was funding that. At the same time, he was doing the whole pan-European union with Kalergi, and all of this kind of like liberal, is a real dialectic there that he was orchestrating in his lifetime. And, so just making that point that it seems like it's really both parts.
Okay, so Hess, and Caligari, they're both kind of like deputy nobility, lesser nobility that answer to Habsburg, but they're like Caligari is Bohemian and Hess, they're like Southern German. None of them are Jew. I find memes calling both of them Jews, and like you'll find made up quotes. So Caligari did say that you're going to see mass migration. You're going to see the European phenotype transform into something that looks ancient Egyptian. Like that's a real quote, but like they'll say us Jews are bringing all these minorities in and we're going to destroy races and mix races until it's only Jews left. It's a made up quote. And then they'll also say the Jew Count Caligari. He's not a Jew. He's like,
right.
It's like
no, demonstrably not.
Yeah, like what you're looking at, what you're looking at is accelerationism, though. So I think these conservative, like I don't want to play in the dialectic because like I'd say a conservative now would be like a libertarian or classical liberal kind of person, like a constitutionalist. Like that's how I frame it, and I'd say that monarchists and distributists, I'd say they're to the left of me if I were to play into that. But I try and even avoid the vocabulary of right versus left because it's just manufactured bullshit categories. It's hard to read, but it's hard to recalibrate your vocabulary to that because it's like so much of our vocabulary is either enforces or is based off bullshit categories too. So it's it's like good luck detoxing yourself. It's like good luck detoxing yourself from all that. But yeah, like what you're looking at, I think, with like the EU mass migration is accelerationism from these old families to justify themselves coming out in the open with this new feudalism I was talking about, neo-feudalism, which is technocracy, where you can have surplus production without freedom. And because ultimately freedom equates to loose ends for that insulated power ecosystem I was talking about. And less loose ends mean they can end up doing whatever the hell they want without fear of consequences. And ultimately, it's like when you look at the inner level, it's like these people want to be able to live forever and essentially become God. Like they think because remember, they're Hermeticists, and Hermeticism is about merging categories to transcend. So merge the category of biology with machine and mind with machine to where you can like upload minds into some cloud, then you transcend matter and souls can collectively merge and share memories, and eventually with smashing together categories you can return to the Garden of Eden, eat from the tree of life, and become God. Is what that's like new. That's Teilhard Chardin's new sphere essentially. It's not going to work, but that's the kind of thing they want.
And Jordan and I had an episode we did maybe a couple months ago about Martine Rothblatt and the Terrasom cult, and that's like literally in their religious doctrine is building the cyber heaven. I mean, they call it that by name, and I mean, so that's that's literally what they imagine it as. But yeah, so with with what we've seen come out in the last week, with or 2 weeks or whatever with these files, and we did see like direct communication between Prince Lorenzo and Jeffrey Epstein as relating to the Medici crypto bank in Puerto Rico, which was in collaboration with Brock Pierce. Like give us your like thoughts on what we saw there. I mean, I just it's beyond belief.
I mean, yeah, what you're looking at is you're looking at one of the core developers of cryptocurrency, Brock Pierce, who's credited as creating Tether, which I think is a bullshit story, but he's the front man.
How so? Why do you think it's bullshit? You don't think he started it?
I think he inherited it. part. I think he's the front man, and then like he's being brought into these cabinets. I think what he is he's a skilled. I think he's skilled for whatever kind of mafia utility they have for these stable coins. So, definitely some kind of mobster guy. And you find all these connections with him. So obviously we have Lorenzo Medici. So he was on the board of Medici Bank, and he comes up as an associate of Lorenzo Medici in the Epstein emails, but also he has Borgia connections. So he was actually sent to El Salvador to help the El Salvador government develop cryptocurrency, but he's being bankrolled by Grupo Borgia actually. And while he went down there, shoot, I'm really bad with Spanish first name. Can't remember the Borgia. Shoot. But there was a Borgia. There was a Borgia though that while Brock Pierce was down there, he was bankrolling like these kiosks that can dispense and deal in cryptocurrency. But the point I'm getting at though is that when you look at these Renaissance era families that you can trace back to late antiquity, which you can trace back to Roman emperors, and some of them you can trace back to like Babylon, Canaan, Egypt, the pharaohs, whatever. Brock Pierce is associated with those families. And what's interesting is in the Epstein emails, you see chats that Lorenzo's in where and Brock Pierce is mentioned in these chat rooms too. He was part of this den trafficking cult. So he was probably trafficking minors. He wasn't convicted of that, but he was convicted of grooming and molesting boys though. So he got a wrist slap for that. Didn't really get in much trouble, but like that's probably only a tip of the iceberg of the kind of stuff Brock Pierce is getting. So, but you definitely have a human trafficking association there. But one thing before the Epstein emails came out, I was speculating on social media. I'm like, well, wait a second. Epstein was in the Academy of Arts. Epstein gave a keynote speech at the Warhol Memorial. It looks like Epstein actually inherited trafficking routes from Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol's art looks like shit. It's bullcrap, but he's selling them $8 million a pop or something. This it looks like Epstein inherited trafficking routes from Andy Warhol, and that these art transactions are covered for human trafficking. I bet that's what Lorenzo Medici is doing too. I didn't have proof for that, but the email in the Epstein leaks that actually came out because in the chat room with Epstein, they're saying, "Oh, buy art from Medici, buy art from Medici," and then when they're saying that, they're posting blurred out these are redacted pictures, but they're posting pictures of little girls in there. So it looks like the buying art means get supply. Yeah, get supply from. And Medici, but just when I was talking about this Medici post on Instagram, I got invited to a pre-Grammy, because remember you have pre-Grammy parties, which is very exclusive A-list celebrity invite, and it's kind of like Diddy parties essentially. Yeah. They're not always same thing going on there, but they have an art exhibit, and Lorenzo Medici's going there, and he put in his caption, "And by the way, we're keeping things very discreet." So it's like on his social media, he posts so many like allusions to trafficking and these kind of like weird activities. And when I started showing screenshots from him, he locked his social media account, so now the public can't see it. So I made him lock his account. I know he sees my stuff and reads my posts.
And you remember we saw the picture on there of him and his daughter in front of the wax statue of Warhol doing the Osiris Risen.
Yes.
Like in Beverly Hills. Like it's so over the top.
I mean,
he's all up in these like St. Jude's facilities, and St. Jude's has been busted for lying about funding the stem cell cartels because they have Catholic donors who don't like that stuff. But then you see something Rogers, Dr. Rogers, I think it's Clint Rogers. There's this guy named Clint Rogers who he has an orphanage. And Lorenzo posted on his Instagram, this guy had these kids at an orphanage say, happy birthday, Prince Lorenzo. And in the background, you can see someone holding a kid, but the kid looks terrified, but the kid's like thrashing around. And he posted that to his Instagram. But guess what? This guy who has an orphanage has stem cell clinics and is affiliated. It's like how much it's like it's so in your, and he's also in Nepal. He's also in Nepal and has these connections to Dalai Lama. And then people in his orbit have clinics over in like Naples and Tuscany, which are major Medici outposts too for their Italian branches. So
and
then
the Dalai Lama.
They have connections to Colorado, the Colorado cult scene too. Yeah,
Right.
like yeah, there's
Right.
a lot.
They have the place in Crestone that the Dalai Lama is immediately a part of, and he was like in the Keithraneri Nexium Bronfman cult too. But yeah, we were seeing all these pictures. Lorenzo loves Memphis, and going to the PGA Tour events that are co-sponsored in Memphis by St. Jude and FedEx, which FedEx is like obviously a facilitator of whatever kind of trafficking also.
Delivery,
yeah, I mean, it's like it's way more than just like the symbolism of it, but like Mike said, I mean, they put it in your face. I mean,
if I mean, one thing I learned, I think a lot of people learned from like even Pizzagate, for example, is that they like to throw it out there. They like to joke about it. Like just thinking of some of like the tweets I've seen, if they're real, which I think they are, from like Chrissy Teigen, or like Courtney Cox has a really questionable tweet out there about I can't remember if it was cannibalism or young girls or something, but very, very disturbing tweet. And yeah, like Elephantis and his friends, and going through there, if you remember any of the research of people did going through his and his friends' Instagram accounts and social media accounts, like they're all depraved. They're into all this fucked up art. They're into all these fucked up parties. They seem to love kids and talk in this really weird lingo. And they're all seem to make jokes to things like rape and pedophilia and human trafficking and abusing children, not just sexually abusing children, but even physically abusing children. So it's wild. It's wild.
And as regards art, I mean, it's not just like, I mean, obviously there's a lot of like social engineering through like art, what is depicted, and but also money laundering. Like art is like
great
historically like a means of laundering vast amounts of money. And it's interesting because like the Medicis like were so famous, going back to like their early family history, when they gained prominence of like being the greatest patrons of the art in those times. And so I think that this is like,
the Habsburgs are also big patrons of
Right.
arts, theater, and music. And that's another thing to get into with, like, you have Sforza. They were the monarchs of Milan. They're so really high up there. Like, you had Sforza, Sforza, Carlo Sforza's son. He actually was working at and the NBC building the same time Arturo Tussolini. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing the same. Arturo Orsoloni or something like that. He was like one of the most famous conductors for opera in the 20th century. But the Saturday Night Live stage is pretty much built the way it is to accommodate this guy. And they both came to New York City at the same time and protested Mussolini, because like they're like the Sforzos were heading the Mazzini Society. So what's interesting, okay, it's a little off topic, but before these guys came over, were big in like the musics and the arts over in North America. His father actually was Italy's head ambassador, but he was stationed over in London. So get this, he went from London he was head of the Mazzini Society. Remember Mazzini created Young Europe. And the Young Turks are an offshoot of that. So the Turkish government was starting to get in the way of British opium routes and was clamping down on opium. So guess what? Sforza goes from London to Turkey. Then you have the Young Turk revolt and the Armenian genocide. Then he goes back to London, then goes over to China, and you have the CCP takeover. Well, he's there too, and then he goes back to London again. And that's one of these old aristocratic families too. But yeah, like they're big in the arts. They're big in the arts and music too. So, and I think they're getting in. Back what you were saying about Scientology and frequency, they're definitely getting in the frequencies too.
Which I think is like even easier to transmit now with like the electronic music and the, you know, like the rap music and these binaural beats and things like that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I think, and it's so tied in at this point now with like the Burning Man culture, which is, you know, so tied in with Silicon Valley. I mean, all of, you know, it's all so integrated in this, you know, programming, you know, like cycle. You know, the technology, the music, the you know, visual arts, all of it is, you know, kind of, you know, all unified. There's a singularity there. So
well, yeah. So didn't you say you wanted this to go on for an hour, 30 minutes? Do you have a little bit of time left, or do you want to wrap it up?
Well, no, we can go for a bit longer. Maybe before we wrap it up, if you want to maybe get into Mimetics for a little bit, we can run for a bit longer.
Well, yeah, that's why I was asking. I didn't want to drag it out or keep you.
No, man, no worries. Let's get into that before we wrap it up. Sounds good.
Well, like I see like because this is what when he's talking about like this convergence, because remember it's like art has in a way always been used for, it's not just about laundering money, it's about manipulating perception to a certain extent, but also poetry would be used for that, also music would be used for that. But like when you see this AI generated slop put into a meme where you have like these 20, 30 second, 1 minute long videos with a really reductionistic message and really annoying music, you know, you're looking at a culmination of really old social engineering methodologies just being smashed together into something new. And that's what I'd say. That's what I'd say Mimetics are. And it's really successful, especially with millennials and Generation Z. Like when you look at the fan base of people who follow someone like Nick Fuentes, it's like their entire worldview is based on meme categories, and you see people reporting historic information based off like these meme summaries. It's like you have a lot of memes talking about the like Albert Pike and Mazzini letter, and I see so many people and conversations bring that up like it's a fact. But once you look at the actual Pike to Mazzini letter and remove it from those memes, it's like it's chock full of anachronisms and couldn't have possibly be written by Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini. Yeah, and like just for context, those you don't know about it, it's this letter where it says we're going to orchestrate 3 world wars, and these are going to be successive world wars, and one of them describes World War I, one of them describes World War II, but like they use words in there like Nazis, which how do you know what a Nazi is if you're writing it in like the 1870s or something? So it's made up bull crap. But like then they talk about there being like this 3rd World War that's designed to like destroy Christianity, and but they frame it like they're behind political Zionism, and it's like this a Jewish kind of conspiracy. But you know, it's like when it's framing, it's memes are pushing framing devices, and so even when people aren't getting their information from memes, they might go back and like look at YouTube videos or maybe a little bit of usually these people, a lot of times these people spout off stuff like they think they know a lot of things, but then like once you question them, it's like either you really haven't read that much, or if you have read it, you're putting what you've read through framing devices that you got from memes, and you still don't really know what you're talking about. But like, yeah, that's where I'd say these memes are getting people. It's like they're getting people at the level of categories by which they filter information through. And I see a lot of people online, but not just online, actually, like repeating framing devices which directly come from either reductionistic slogans, which might be pre-meme or might be people who aren't online that much, or memes, which take like reductionism and slogans to a whole new level. Because like that's pretty much what memes are. It's like a combination of slogans with other cross-sensory media like visual, sound, that kind of thing.
And we, the thing about the, memes too, is like, we don't actually know the origins. I mean, it could be like this account or that account, but who really made them? Like, they go viral, they're, pushed by these algorithms, and like they could be like coming from these labs, like meme generating, like social engineering labs at Tavistock or, whatever, like, the CIA. I mean, it stands to reason that these are like the, easiest, most distributable, form of any kind of, propaganda distilled into these, very easily digestible nuggets.
Yeah, and I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like when some people see a meme, whether they like it or not, sometimes they might automatically just assume or think that, okay, a large group of people, if not the majority of people, think that this is true or think that way. Or
yes, then
manufacturing consensus.
Yes.
But then, like, yeah, what they're doing is they are analyzing demographics and the categories demographics have, then adding a layer of confirmation bias to these already existing sentiments for further social engineering purposes. And a lot of times, what this does is they have, you see this with like one side. For Trump 2016 to 2020, for instance, like one side, it starts with 4chan communities, and then what sticks and becomes big on 4chan gets circulated to Facebook, Reddit, and these places. That's where the more conservative demographics, and for the left-leaning technocratic types, it comes from mainstream media. But like you're seeing different meta narratives being distributed to different demographics, and then it keeps changing meta narrative. Like the meta narratives keep evolving into a new direction, keep getting like psyops stacked on top of psyops, until you essentially have different cultures and different civilizational trajectories within like the same geographical regions. It's not sustainable. It's not sustainable for civilization whatsoever, and it's the kind of thing which is meant to accelerate the destruction of society and then justify, like, oh my gosh, look, like you guys can't be civilized. We're gonna have, and oh my gosh, look, we have all these other emergencies going on now too, and you can't organize properly around it and be autonomous. So you need everything tracked. You need big daddy government to protect you and keep you safe, and you need 15-minute cities, and you need digital currency. That's the same kind of thing the Epstein leaks are doing now. Also, like you need like non-partial AI judges. Look how corrupt these human institutions are. And another thing, just really quick with the Epstein thing, I kind of think that like what you're actually looking at is clearing the threshing floor of middle management and people, institutions that are going to be obsolete for this AI robotic infrastructure is going to be coming out. So then a lot of middle management is going to be thrown to the wolves too, like you would see with like the Night of Long Knives or the Stalin purges. I think like the Epstein reveal is kind of like a precursor to a modern equivalent of that as well. But yeah, it's a little off topic.
But what is on topic is like, and of course in these, new file dumps, like seeing, the amount of involvement that Epstein had in 4chan, in that era, in that milieu of like the QAnon, the Pepe memes, like like it's just unbelievable, like this integration of orchestration, in that network, and of course Steve Bannon, being one of the promulgators of it, and being like on the inside, in the Trump, you know, uh, campaign and administration in the first term. I mean, it's like it's so interlocked.
Well, yeah, and like you even have the people who can be proven to be writing the QAnon posts on like like 8chan, or it's not, yeah, but like those guys are saying actually Steve Bannon was like ordering it's not, then you have fact checkers saying no, that's not true, and some of these fact checkers are also hostile to Bannon, so maybe they're running cover for him, maybe they don't find evidence. I kind of think they're running cover for Bannon. I think Bannon was like one of the ringleaders of Q, actually.
No question.
Yeah, and he was like, especially during the 2020 lockdowns, it's like he really was pushing Q hard during the 2020 lockdowns and early 2021, when like the Trump base was like really worried about the Democrats taking over everything. Like, oh my gosh, look, they just stole the election. Look, they're pushing this bioweapon vaccine on everyone, and that kind of create an ecosystem of hysteria to push Q. Now, I'd say even with that kind of demographic, Q has been pretty widely discredited, because like Q, it's kind of like an exercise in obfuscation through tea leaf reading methodologies. Like, look, we're Q said this. Q left these numbers behind. That means on this date, Trump is going to be like, you kept hearing like Trump will be reinstated on March 8th. Oh, never mind. These numbers meant March 15th. Oh, March 15th came around. It's been March 20th. Yeah, it never happened. Eventually, people just see it's bullshit and sort of hopped off it. But yeah.
But at the same time, like what we are seeing now with all this disclosure, from the Epstein files and all this stuff, is actually like a lot of confirmation of a lot of what came out of, that scene, of QAnon and, Pizzagate and all this stuff. Like it's like, oh yeah, this stuff is real, so much of it. And even like, being like now embraced on the left or whatever, you're seeing like, yeah, a lot of this was meant to be like bullshit and to discredit a lot of it. And also now it's like, oh yeah, there's so much of this stuff that is real. Like, people are losing their minds. And it's it's a crazy dynamic now. So
well, part of what it was supposed to do was it was lacing real information in with essentially divination. So one thing, it promotes a methodology that can't lead to truth while lacing that in with truth. Another thing is lacing truth in with BS. So if someone on the street hears, oh my gosh, is this and that person trafficking? If someone said, yes, here's that, here's some of this QAnon stuff that's true, but here's a lot of this other BS. Like for a lot of those so-called normies, it just pushes them away from even the true information that would have come out of the ecosystem also, which creates more layers, that balkanization between normies, non-normies. Then now within the so-called truthers like us, now you're having more and more communities being created in the truther space, people who are so-called conspiracy theorists who have completely different framing devices and different ways of conceiving the power structure too. And they increasingly can't agree on anything also. Like you have Jewish question versus this or that. Yeah.
Right.
It's like throwing gasoline in the discourse. Yeah.
When it comes to QAnon, do you think this guy was actually involved?
Yes.
What's the deal with him? I mean, I saw the I think it's called Down the Rabbit Hole or something, the documentary that like revolves pretty much around him. And then at the end of the documentary, he seems like he did it on purpose, but the documentary makes it seem like it was a slip up, and he says something in a way, and he says it in a way that he's kind of taking credit for being Q. So a lot of people said, "Oh, maybe he is Q," and you know he was involved with 8kun and 4chan and all that, and
Yeah, it wasn't 8chan. It was 8kun. Yeah. I said 8chan earlier. I meant to say 8Q. This is the guy actually who was pointing the finger at Bannon for being Q. Actually,
in an HBO documentary, and that down the rabbit hole. Yeah.
That's what I was mentioning when we lost it
every time you're pulling up something on your screen is when I lose my audio. I don't know why, but sorry.
No worries. I'll stop doing it.
No, that's okay.
So if he's pointing the finger at Bannon and you think Bannon's involved and you think he's involved, so what's going on there? Are they throwing smoke bombs at themselves and by pointing at themselves, or what are they doing there? What's your thoughts?
Well, yeah. So I think what you might be getting is I think Ron might have been getting, I think he probably wanted attention in the spotlight a little bit, but I think that he was getting probably a little bit more criticism he was bargaining for. So I think he wanted to by introducing a name in there, it's like, oh, well, hey, like maybe some of this bullshit actually came from Bannon, because he wasn't really like all that direct with it. So I think it's kind of like adding plausible deniability to save his reputation a little bit. But ultimately, like, I think rather Bannon was involved or not, which I definitely think he was, I think they're getting something from a script that's being given to them by other people to throw smoke bombs onto the general public. And then once a spotlight they don't want is on them, is when they start deflecting and pointing the finger at other people in that circle. That's I can't confirm that, because I'm kind of like reading interpersonal dynamics. I can't confirm into the situation, but given what I know about human nature, that's what I think's going on.
I mean, Ron Watkins and his dad are interesting characters. I mean, Ron, if you guys seen the HBO documentary, you can definitely tell this guy wants attention. He is trying so goddamn hard to act like he's some awkward, quiet guy who doesn't want any attention at all. Meanwhile, he's like, you know what I mean? And just the way he says stuff, he'll like say something, Q did this, or Q, the board is down because we got so much shit going on. And like, he just says it like it's no big deal, because he knows it is a big deal and it's going to garner a lot of attention. And I think
I'm just this quiet. I'm don't mind me. I'm just this quiet autistic type.
Exactly. And then at the end, he tried. I think he ran for. I don't know if he ran for Congress or what. Then he just like outed. I think that's when he really outed himself as like, okay, what the fuck are you? Are you actually part of Q? I think you just want attention. And now, like, I don't know what the last is on this guy, but I haven't heard from this guy forever. Like, his Wikipedia page has no.
That's what I was getting at. I don't think he was an architect for Q. I think it's more like he was like, oh, I think because how intelligence works is like someone like David Icke, for instance. David Icke, is it David Icke? Shoot. Am I getting the right name? Is my getting the right name? Habsburg.
David. I mean, yeah, David Icke's the real guy.
Okay,
he's the reptilian guy.
Yeah, no. Sorry, I've been having some of these White Claw. So yes, that guy.
Cheers.
Yeah. It's like he you can like Toby United Nations of Spectre posted this, but like he kind of had delusions of grandeur instilled in him at a young age, and he was pretty much recruited by intelligence to do what he's doing right now by promoting this information. But he also thinks that a lot of the stuff he promotes is on his own. So how I think this works is people like Watkins or David Icke, they will be fed BS and nudge in certain directions, while they also are fed delusions of grandeur. Like, like when you look at him being an attention whore, he sort of fits in that profile. So then they're kind of given a little bit of a script, but it's done in a way where they can think it's their own ideas also. And so what I think they do is I think these intelligence handlers end up using frontmen with people who are really insecure and easy to manipulate. So then when operations get too much heat and too much attention, they can throw these guys who are willing to be frontmen because they're attention whores and they have all these insecurities as essentially shock absorbers. That's how I think it works.
And I think, I think too, and this is just like, total speculation or whatever on my part, but when it comes to Q, like I think Michael Aquino, I'm thinking that he was like, developing this concept, that this is like part of his, mind war strategy. And, I think a lot of this Q stuff came from Michael Aquino.
I think it came from Orsini too. Ciro Orsini. It's like you have pictures of Ciro Orsini with other QAnon architects like David Steele, and they're in his bar.
Sasha Stone.
Yeah, they're in his bar. There's pictures of them at the bar in London with also this Catholic priest, and they're pointing at a MAGA hat, laughing at it, like, "Hey, that's a demographic we're duping." Haha, stupid MAGA, like that, like. Yeah, it's like so. Ciro Orsini seems like another one of these architects for Q who's kind of like not level of Watkins, where Watkins is sort of like the shock absorber, and I think like Aquino and what Ciro Orsini are like the layer behind that. And or by the way, Orsini, that's one of the Papal Dynasty guys too.
Right. Well, so, no, go ahead.
I just wanted to. Since we're talking about it, I just wanted to play the clip. I haven't seen it in a while, but
something shocking.
So here's Ron Watkins, like, supposedly making a mistake after like a 6-hour documentary and then being followed for how long, and apparently he didn't make any slip-ups. And this, I'm pretty sure this was filming when the director was already back home and like finishing the film. So like, I guess he decided, okay, I got to slip this in here. So think of it what you will, but
Ron hadn't just been participating in Q research. It sounded like he was leading it.
Yeah, so thinking back on it, like it was basically 3 years of intelligence training, teaching normies how to do intelligence work. It's basically what I was doing anonymously before, but never as Q.
See that smile? Ron had slipped up. He knew it, and I knew it. And after 3 tireless years of cat and mouse, well...
Never as Q, I promise.
Never as
Q. Because I am not cute. It never was.
Oh, man.
So
that confirms this kind of speculation where they said, yeah, like they're trying to get normies and scope them out for intelligence work. My take on that is they're setting a wide net to profile people for operations like that. And he goes on and says, yeah, I'm not Q. So yeah, that means what I take that is he was going off a script from intelligence handlers to be a front man and shock absorber. Like it's that I think that confirms exactly what I was saying, honestly.
Okay. So he was maybe a puppet part of Q?
Yes.
Okay.
And I think they profile people for operations like that. Yeah. And that's what he was referring to, where he was talking about like, and they want to recruit normies for intelligence. Yeah.
Gotcha. I would love for us to do an episode where we like talk about who could be Q, part of Q, all that.
I don't think there's one Q. I do not think.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Like that would.
That's even like the narrative that they established in that documentary is like, well, it was somebody was doing it before they started 8chan, and then that post that went away, and then this other guy came in, and then
have you heard of the X22 report?
No, what's that?
It's this big Rumble channel. He blew up in 2020 and 2021. Like talking about like the election being stolen and Trump's going to be reinstated. Like patriots are in control. Trust the plan. But he put out that Q is actually a quantum computer developed in the 60s that can process information at the speed of light, and it can actually see parallel dimensions. And so when Q gets a prediction wrong from them reading tea leaves, it's because it's a quantum computer actually looking at other timelines. So like sometimes the timeline it's predicting will match ours, but other times it's not.
I mean, you'd only have to make up some fucked up thing like that for it to fucking all the connections to connect. So yeah, that's real fucking plausible. Like, fuck off, man.
Yeah, Q's a light speed processing quantum computer.
So how about that? Yeah. Oh my god.
And on some level, like that tracks as much as almost any of these other things too.
Sure. Fair enough. Well, guys, this was a lot of fun, man. Michael, it was a pleasure to meet you, man. We would love to have you back, man.
I'd appreciate it too.
I think that's a damn fact. Talking about truths and lies and facts and fiction, that is a fact, my friend.
Man, I didn't get into as much with the late antiquity going the Middle Ages I want, but like it's kind of hard to off-cut monologue that, because there's so much to cover that it's like you start going in one direction, like, oh, maybe it's like, wait a second, I left out all these other institutions and families and stuff. So it's like it's really hard to do that by myself. But yeah,
man. That's okay. You did a great job. You definitely dropped a lot of fucking knowledge in my head. I'm sure a lot of the viewers and listeners learned a lot. I hope Hadsberg enjoyed himself. So we would definitely love to have you back, man. Before we get going, though, Michael, Mr. King, can you let everyone know where they can find you? Anything else you want to promote or push to the people? Take your time. Now is your chance, my friend.
Yeah, so I have a YouTube. I can just DM you guys the links. It's in my bio too. I'm doing a Patreon where I'm posting. My mom's editing it right now. When she's done editing, I'm gonna post my Patreon. But then also my sister-in-law's she does audio recording. She's going to make into an audio book, so it's like the written version is going to be behind a small paywall, but it's eventually going to go out for free on my YouTube channel also. So I'm going to be doing that. So I'm pretty much just on YouTube, X, and recently Patreon, but it's like I don't have anything on my Patreon yet. It's not going to be until my mom's done editing it when I'm going to be doing that.
Fair enough, buddy. Fair enough. All right, man. Well, appreciate your time. All the best to you.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. All right, my friend.
Yeah, sounds
Thanks,
good.
Mike.
I just
really appreciate the time.
Because I didn't even know you DM'd me until like just now, but I sent you my email address. So yeah.
Oh, all good, man. Appreciate it. All right, I'll be in touch, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your evening, my friend. You take care.
Yeah, you too. Thank you.
All right, see you, Mike.
See ya.
All right, Hadsberg, thank you so much for your time as well. You want to let everyone know where they can find you on social media?
Oh, I just have the old Twitter.
You put out some good shit, man. You put out some good shit, so don't be so humble.
It's the Twitter profile. It's Habsburg Jolly West. The handle it's at accountable to me, and just. Man, enjoy doing this with you, Jordan, and that was fun to have Mike on, and great, definitely covered some ground. So appreciate that. Like you went a little late. I know it's getting late out there for you. So
yeah, man, no worries. This was it was great. So thanks for setting it up. So yeah, everyone, make sure to go check out Hadsberg. He dropped a few great posts over the last couple days, and he always has great stuff on there. So check him out. Especially
and we're doing a show on Saturday that should be a banger, me and you. So
yeah, that'll be a good one. We don't want it. Do you want to give any details away, or do you want to keep it a surprise? What do you want to share about it?
well, if anybody's interested, this is going to be kind of like some personal disclosure. I was in one of these real crazy um, um, like troubled teen, centers in Alabama, northeastern Alabama in the 90s. And I have some pretty crazy research that I've done that, links the operation to military intelligence through Fort Bragg and Redstone Arsenal. And I'll be sharing that documentation as well as a lot of personal experiences, a lot of wild stories, and it should make for quite a conversation. So, and totally all, personally, experience. So it's all firsthand. So it should be a really fun show, and I'm
That's
looking
cool,
forward
man.
to giving that out. So
Yeah, man, and I appreciate you sharing it.
yeah.
If it comes up, if I'm able to, I will get personal too, just to keep you comfortable. So it might be a very personal show, but it'll be a great topic. It'll be a lot of fun. So yeah, stay tuned on Saturday. But we do have a show tomorrow at noon, I believe, and shit, I can't remember right now. I think one on Thursday as well.
Big show on Thursday.
Yeah, big show on Thursday too. We got Jake, the former Q shaman, coming on. Speaking of Q, so
Yeah, ask that guy.
yeah, that fucking guy should know. So yeah, but in the meantime, make sure to subscribe to the Divulgence podcast on YouTube, Rumble. We actually have the Rumble tip jar open now, so don't feel compelled to, but if for some reason you do want to support the show right now, there's an actual way to do it now. You can also get audio on Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. So please subscribe, drop a nice comment, a thumbs up, a 5-star, something like that. And of course, the Scott Horton Academy is open, and we are an affiliate with them. So make sure to check out the Scott Horton Academy. Go to scotthortonacademy.com/divulgence for a nice discount. And yeah, I think that's it for now. So enjoy the shows we have this week, and make sure to turn in Saturday, because that will be a fucking banger. Hadsburg, all the best, my friend. Thank you.
No, thanks, bud. Have a good night.
You too. Peace, brother.